right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever in the world it is that you are. Welcome once more to another video podcast of PNT Live Political News Time with a dash of IRL news and every once in a while some adult entertainment industry news also. I am your host, Alex Mayers, and remember, if you want to check out the archives of this podcast, along with a multitude of others that I've put together over the years, all you have to do is visit PNTLIVE.net for links to just about everything that matters. So anyway, let's talk about Skimask Andy a little bit, all right? Now, from what I'm aware of, he still has his court hearing on September 10th. So that will be this week. And I suppose that all of his fans and friends and followers will have an update when it comes to what's going on with him at that particular time. But last night I did a fairly brief just an audio podcast to, touch base with some of you out there. And a thought crossed my mind, and I wanted to repeat that thought today because I think I'm correct about the situation. Now, for those of you who are not aware as to what occurred with Skimask Andy, Skimask Andy has been arrested and is currently serving time in jail due to his ex-girlfriend, a woman known as Bobby Dillon, who coincidentally, for some reason, consistently talks about Mark Randazza, and his wife. But she made some statements, it appears, to law enforcement, to police, in regards to Skimask Andy that were not entirely, so it seems, accurate. It seems as though she may have exaggerated the situation. It seems as though she was in the heat of the moment and she may have told some mistruths, some lies to law enforcement. But regardless, her statements to law enforcement resulted in Skimask Andy being arrested and put in prison. First, he was on house arrest, but it seemed that he didn't have a landline and a permanent residence. So he was picked up by law enforcement, and since then he's been within the Clark County Correctional Facility, to my knowledge. But it's known at this point, considering Skimask Andy's ex's statements that she made of her own volition, of her own free will, on her YouTube streams, that from her perspective, she was somehow coerced by law enforcement to make the statements that she did. She's not taking any accountability for her actions, it seems. Instead, she is simply blaming law enforcement. She seems to have some beef or some issues with police. She actually stated that police involvement makes things worse all the time. And she does seem to be hoping that she can drop the charges against Skimask Andy. She did make that statement.
So it's just like a shitty situation, and again reminds me how nothing ever becomes better from the police being involved. And he has court on the 10th, and then we'll find out what happens then. Hopefully like a plea deal, hopefully released, hopefully, dropped completely.
So basically she's backpedaling on her accusations against Skimask Andy. Yet here's a young man in his mid-30s who's lost a substantial portion of his life due to his apparent attempt to leave a psychologically abusive relationship. And he was the victim of the abuse. Now, here's the question. If Skimask Andy had been a person of color, namely an African American male, rather than an American male of European descent, who's without a doubt a white male, blonde hair, blue-eyed, I would assume Germanic white male, if he had been African American instead, and this situation, same exact situation had happened, doesn't it seem like most likely the situation would have been in the mainstream media, or at least more so in the independent media? I believe it would have been, because it would have been a situation revolving around a woman who appears to be a white woman accusing a black male and then openly making it known that she didn't give accurate statements to law enforcement in regards to being physically assaulted. If this same woman had done that to a black male, most likely the entire Democratic created BLM movement would be up in arms. We all know about it. But because this is a white male who everyone looks at and automatically assumes is incredibly privileged due to the element of white privilege in America. And white privilege is very interesting because oftentimes it is individuals who pass as white who receive white privilege and utilize white privilege far more than individuals who are of Northern European descent. It's very true, especially if those individuals of Northern European descent are impoverished or poor. And that's the case actually when it comes to Skimask Andy. He comes from a relatively impoverished background. But the whole situation really does make me mad, because it just seems to me if he had been black instead of white, he'd have so much more support in regards to the psychological abuse he's endured, in regards to the mistreatment, it seems, by law enforcement that he's endured, because from my perspective at least, it doesn't look like they investigated very far into his ex, because she does have a consistent history of not telling the truth, which is now well documented. But it's just something for many of you out there to think about. It really is. So you all can take a look at the videos revolving around the situation over on my Twitter account at AlexMayersLive. You can look at the history of the situation over on pornnewstoday.com. And remember, subscribe to Skimask Andy's YouTube channels. But I do want to make it clear that as of current, to my knowledge, she does not have access to those YouTube channels from prison. And it does seem that either his ex or his ex's brother have control of his internet properties. In fact, his ex's brother seems relatively obsessed, seems to have an unhealthy obsession, actually, with my video and audio podcast. This individual does have a criminal record. So whether it's his ex or her brother, steer clear of those individuals. They do seem to be white Democrats, and they do seem to embody quite a high level of racism, specifically against African American women who are supportive of the Republican Party and Donald Trump, such as myself. So that's all that I wanted to touch on in regards to IRL news. So next, let's go.